All right, Bill. Well, thanks so much for taking time out to chat with me today. I really appreciate it. I value our relationship so much. Well, you've been working on climate change as a scientist for many years now. Why do you think forests are so important at this particular moment in time?
We should not just think of forests as trees or even as just carbon. I mean, even though half of their weight is carbon,
Right.
they are carbon.
Our carbon.
But a forest is so much more. A forest is a very complex system. Well, just by way of background, I did get started working on climate change formally in 1988 when I went to Washington to be the first director of the climate program at the World Resources Institute. And from that time on until about, I don't know, well, 12 or so years ago, the focus was entirely on technology. We hear a lot of talk about net zero carbon, but nobody has any idea where the net is coming from. That is, what's going to be taking out what we're still emitting.
And forests are our best hope for pulling down carbon out of the atmosphere. There really is no other technology available to us.
And also, I'm working very closely with wetland ecologists and scientists now, because wetlands hold a huge amount of carbon. And when they're disturbed, they can release an enormous amount of methane.
Industrial logging is contributing massive amounts of carbon emissions into the atmosphere that currently are not being counted.
Land conversions, insect diseases, fires, now all that together adds up to 15% of emissions from forests. And 85% comes from cutting trees down.
Right.
And only using half or less of the tree in building material. The Forest Service and the forestry industry have become a little sensitive to this, and so they try emphasizing that wood products should be used to substitute for more carbon-intense products. Well, what they always fail to do in those analyses is to recognize that the average lifetime of a wood-built house in the United States is 45 years.
Right.
My other revelation that came about in part from working with dogwood is the realization that an older forest is not just a bank account that's earning no interest. It's not just trees sitting there and dying, as is often claimed. In fact, when I looked into it, I discovered that most of this extra removal that's going on in the world of carbon dioxide by forests is going on, of course, by forests that are already there. And I kept wondering, why in all these analyses does afforestation and reforestation make such a small difference? Well, it's because little trees don't hold much carbon, and they won't hold much carbon for many years. So waiting for a tree to get to be 30 years old compared to a 30-year-old tree growing to be 60 years, it's no contest.
I was just in eastern North Carolina last week, and we were driving down a country road near two wood pellet mills, in between two wood pellet mills and three paper mills. And lo and behold, there's this big, huge clear cut. And we get out of the car, and it's a hardwood forest. And the stumps are big enough that that it was probably a 60-year-old trees in there, which means a 60-year-old forest at least. And every time I see that, I realize we've gone back 60 years.
Yep. Climate resiliency. Right? What are we getting now? We're getting these horrific downpours, for example, flooding.
Right.
Well, trees do suck up a lot of water and transpire it from their leaves. I just saw a study recently that said that in the Amazon, there is more water that is transferred from the Amazon forest to the Atlantic Ocean through the air that's transpired by the forest than flows through the Amazon River, which is the largest volume river in the world. That's pretty astounding. That means that that's avoiding flooding somewhere, right? And it's bringing moisture to other parts of the world where it's needed.
What do you appreciate most about dogwood? And what have you learned from working with us?
First of all, I learned of the remarkable way in which you have joined forces with the environmental justice community, the people who are most adversely affected by not only harvesting, but the manufacturing of wood pellets, the burning of wood as a fuel, and just making that an integral link. It's not, and we'll do environmental justice. No, it is we are protecting forests and environmental justice in the same breath. That's really, really quite remarkable.
Because the connection between people and forests is real.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
It is real.
I mean, I think you have attracted really, really good people who are not only passionate about the issues and reacting to it in an emotional, just, gut level way, but you're driven by the facts. You are not claiming things that aren't true. I mean, or that it's just my opinion against your opinion, my belief against your belief. It's much more than that. That's really, really one of the factors that has made Dogwood effective.
Thank you, Bill, for saying that. I know we try to really pride ourselves on operating with integrity, and that means telling the truth.
Yes.
Well, what do you see the next 25 years? What do you see Dogwood's impact being in the next 25 years?
However you got on this path, Dana, I don't really know for sure because I didn't know you 25 years ago when you were starting this. But you somehow intuitively figured out what it has taken science a very long time to document and verify about the value of keeping forests intact as these complex ecosystems. And that benefits not only nature and climate and biodiversity, it benefits human beings as well.
Right.
Obviously, as a regional organization, it's going to affect that region of the Southeast US very prominently. But I think the successes you have there are going to have national and even international implications, because you will be seen as a model for how to get this done. And because you're doing it in a region that is, as you say, the wood basket of the country, in the sense that that's where we are getting most of our, the largest part of our wood is from the Southeast.
So if I see the next 25 years, I see no more public dollars going to support industrial extraction of forests.
No.
And instead, those public dollars going to support communities and building, more thriving economies like outdoor recreation and, nature-based jobs that are consistent with the climate agenda, that are consistent with the protection of nature and leaving trees standing and allowing them to grow and pull that carbon out of the atmosphere.
Right. Right. Well, if we're going to pay anybody to deal with forestry, we're going to be paying them to keep their trees standing rather than to cutting them down. I think in the next 25 years, there's the grim scenario, but there's also the hopeful scenario. And I prefer working to implement the hopeful scenario in order to avoid the grim scenario and to make life better for all of us.